pray that doesn't fall. So I have my stuff set up right here. I'm going to use charcoal. You guys can use a pencil. I'm using charcoal so it's easier to see on this white piece of paper. And then I'll also outline it in some compressed charcoal so that it's even darker. All you need is a pencil and maybe two if you want to have a measuring tool in one hand and a drawing tool in the other. The first thing you want to do is collect. So you have one simple object and you have one complex object. That's what I'm asking you to set up for yourself. You want to start by measuring out the easiest object. So, for example, if you've chosen a glass cup, start with that. I'm going to start with this mason jar filled with turpentine, and then we'll go from there. But the first thing that you want to do is you want to just basically sketch out what it is you're looking at. Remember to I tend to slouch a lot. Remember to keep your posture upright so that you know exactly the position that you're looking at these objects in. Because if you slouch, you change the angle of the objects that you're looking at, and which changes everything about them. So it's important that if we're working on this for a couple days, these things cannot move. They have to stay in the same spot, and then you have to return back to them and draw them from the same position. Otherwise, you're not going to get the proportions that you need to get. So let's start by sketching out the basic outline of this mason jar. It's at a slight angle. We have the lid here. Keep it loose. Just try and draw what you're seeing. Don't be nitpicky about the details quite yet. Just try and map everything out. I'm just going to take the angle of the outside edge of this just to make sure I'm doing that correctly. Okay. So this is what I think the jar looks like. Just from me looking at it, this is what I think it looks like. I can check that measurement. I've guessed the width and I've guessed the height. So if this is going to be the width that I'm going with, I'm assuming that this is correct. Then what I can do is take my comparative method. I can measure the width from observation. I'm going to hold that measurement with my thumb. I'm not going to move my thumb. I'm going to keep my arm straight. And I'm going to I'm going to match my thumb up with the bottom. And I'm going to go up. And I'll find that the width of the jar to the height is about, there's two heights within one width. One width goes into the height of the jar 2 times. So I'll take the measurement of the width I've drawn now. It's a different measurement. And I'm going to bring that into the base, line it up with the base, and I'm going to go up and look at how much shorter my jar is from the jar in person. So the top of my jar, either the top of my jar or the bottom of my jar has to get extended, and I'm actually going to drop the bottom of my jar lower because I want the bottom of my jar to go a little bit lower. So the bottom of my jar is going to go somewhere around here. Again, these aren't perfect proportions, but you can see that they help you see mistakes that you make a little more clearly. The next thing I want to do is I can see a little bit of the turpentine in the background, and I can see where the back of the jar kind of rounds out. I can also measure that by figuring out where the furthest point of that back edge is, and I'm going to take my width and I'm going to compare it to that point. So I'm going to measure the width, and I'm going to align my thumb with the base. And I'm going to see that it's about 2/3 of the way up. 2/3 of that width measurement. So I'm going to take the measurement of my width of my drawing now, and I'm going to bring that to the base, and I'm going to make a mark at about 2/3. I know that 2/3 up, that's where the back of, or the base of my jar is seen through the glass. I'm leaving this edge open because I know that the water bottle is going to intersect here. So I know that that's going to happen. So I'm leaving that open. I don't know exactly where, but it doesn't matter. So the next thing I'm going to do is let's figure out what's going on with this cap. I know that the width of the cap is pretty much the same size as the width of the jar, so I'm more concerned where the base of the cap is, and I can check that measurement by taking the measurement of the width from I'll do this from observation first, and then I'm going to measure from the top of the cap down and see how many times the width goes into the top of the cap down. So I'll take my measurement from observation, align my thumb with the top, and I'll see that it's about 2/3 also. So I'll take my width measurement, align it to the top, pull about 2/3 down, here's halfway, 2/3. It looks like we were in the right spot. So this is a good spot for the base of that cap. I'm just going to go ahead and round this out a little bit more. Make it look more like a cap. The last thing I'm going to do before moving on from the jar is I want to see where there's like a little bit of a divot in the glass that rounds the outer edge or close to the lip of the glass. So I'm going to take my width from observation, and I'm going to start from the bottom, and I'm going to go 1, 2, and I'm noticing that this little lip right here is 1.5 widths high from the base. 1.5. So now I'm coming into an issue. I can see I've dropped my my cap a little too low. What should really be happening is that glass divot should be around here, and then my lid should have went a little further up. These are all mistakes that I wouldn't think of if I wasn't drawing or taking these comparisons. Okay, so that's enough just to get an understanding of this jar. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start figuring out my complex object. In this case, I'm using my running water bottle, and it's got a whole lot of circles and a whole lot of ellipses that I'm going to have to measure out. And I'll have to get more accurate than just these really wide strokes of this graphite, which I can do with my compressed charcoal, but for now we're just going to practice with this. So I'm going to pick a point, preferably one of the corners of my jars, so that I can start using the angle tool, the angle method, to find out where I can start drawing implied lines to figure out where the back of the water bottle is, where the front of the water bottle is, where some of the intersection points are, where the water bottle starts to overlap my mason jar. So I think one area that I would like to use is this corner up here. So I'm gonna, in my real life observation, I'm gonna align my tool with that corner, and I'm gonna find the angle between this corner and the back of my water bottle. So I'm going to take that angle. Remember to keep your arms straight out. And then as soon as you grab that angle, hold your wrist firm, keep your arms straight, move it directly from your drawing, or from your observation to your drawing, and draw that angle. Double check it. And confirm it. I know that the back of the water bottle is going to hit somewhere along this line here. I know that because I've made my measurement. I've just checked it. But like we talked about, we have to take measurements of these things twice to make sure that we know where a certain point of the water bottle is. Before I do that, I want to figure out where's the front of the water bottle to. So I'm going to go from the same measurement, and I'm going to find the front of the water bottle, which should be down here somewhere. So I'm going to make that, measure that implied angle, or that implied line between those two corners. I'm going to hold that measurement, and I'm going to take it directly to my drawing. And I want to see evidence of your guys' angles, measuring your angles. So what does that look like, you might ask? Well, as soon as you find it, I want you to draw over your image. I want you to show me that you found that angle. And I want you to draw it over top everything you've drawn. So you can prove to me that I found this angle. This is where along this you're going to see the water bottle spout. So it proves to me that you have gone through and you've been finding those implied angles between points. You can continue this throughout. So we know that this corner is kind of pretty close to correct because we have this thing in relatively good proportion. So I'm going to take two measurements for the tip of the water bottle. I'm going to take this corner over here as well, and I'm going to compare it to where the base of the water bottle is, the spout is. Let me grab that measurement. And I see that this is the angle. So I know the water bottle should land somewhere here. Now, if you remember when we measured the base of the martini glass, we used multiple measurements to figure out where the top of the ellipse was, the top of the martini base was, as well as the bottom of the martini base. And then we used all of those measurements to kind of map in that ellipse. I'm going to give you an example of what I'm talking about right there. Finding the top of this water bottle spout. So now I know it's about this high. I know one side is here and another side is here. And just for the sake of time, I'm going to guess that it's about that wide. And I'm going to eyeball this dark gradient. Now that I have this in place, I can use this as another tool to find more angles. Like if I wanted to find, let's say, exactly where the cap of this water bottle is, I'm going to just sketch it in. But I could measure from the top of this water bottle spout to the top of the cap and find another angle. And I see that that is the angle I'm looking for. I can also go to the base of the water cap and I can find where it ends on this side. So I'm going to take that measurement in person, I'm going to bring it over. And draw that line in. And our water cap ends about right here. This is the general shape of that. I'm just going to quickly map in some of these things. I'm not going to measure them real quick. So now we have the water bottle. While those angles are off, this actually goes like this. Woo! So you see, just by eyeballing this, I was very far off. So it is very much a game of drawing something, erasing it, checking your measurement to make sure you did it correctly, redrawing it. It's not going to be perfect the first time. And you can really get caught up on small details. Like you can see me, I'm already absorbed by this cap. So I'm going to try and stop doing this and figure out some more measurements. I know where the back of my water bottle is. I know where the front of my water bottle is. I know some specifics of the front of my water bottle, and so what I'm going to do next is take the top of my spout and I'm going to find out where the back right corner of my water bottle is. Have an angle something like this. And then I'm going to, again, measure from the top of this to the back right corner. I get an angle like this. And this is going to be where that back right corner is. Now I can draw roughly what the shape of the water bottle looks like. On its right side. Another thing is I know the furthest back left corner is along this line, so I'm going to measure from the top of the spout back there. It should be somewhere around here. And so I'm going to draw in that curved line that I'm seeing. And I'm just going to guess the rest of the water bottle. And then I'll map in the measurements more accurately after I'm done with that. this, something like this. I can map in some of the details if I want, briefly. I think this little pouch is going to be somewhere right here. And we have the outer edge of that handle. Little handle poking out here. Boom. Boom. And so now we have both objects roughly sketched in. And like I said, it's rough. It's a rough sketch. We have 2 days to create a precise drawing of the 2 objects that we're observing. And if you finish with the proportions correctly, then you can go in and start doing maybe some shading, but avoid anything but getting your angles down and measuring points using those implied lines and the comparative method. I hope this little bit of a demo gave you a more clear insight as to what I'm expecting you to be doing. It seemed like there was a little bit of confusion. There were some things that I was seeing that where people were taking measurements of well, I saw people taking measurements from their observation and then keeping that measurement and drawing that on their page, which you could do, but it's going to be more work for you. In this case, you can kind of freely sketch something out, and then you can make those measurements afterwards, and then you can start to use those angles to more accurately place your objects. So I hope this was helpful. Please contact me in the Google Meet and ask questions. Yeah.